Hello. I have not been making as many of these as I'd like because I'm actually in transit moving to San Francisco in a temporary apartment in San Francisco now, which is why this doesn't look quite the same. So speaking of being in San Francisco, tech hub, right? So let's talk about end user empathy, which is very much like a tech term with respect to user experience design. And let's talk about how that pertains to oil and gas. I know in oil and gas, people are starting to adopt a lot more of the tech acumen. So from a tech perspective, what is the product for an oil pipeline company? It's actually moving oil safely and efficiently. So it's not the actual oil, it's not the pipe, it's moving the oil safely and efficiently for the customers. So the end user in that case is actually the control room operators. The control room operator is operating the asset to move the oil safely and efficiently. It's a little bit different. Some people might think that your end user is actually the people at the pumps filling up their gas tanks. That's not actually correct. That's a customer, right? So why is this important? So as an executive in oil and gas or as an engineer in oil and gas, understanding that they are your end user, a form of a customer, and making the control room operator successful is extremely important to the success of the organization. So I'm just listing ways here that have been talked about in tech blogs about user experience design that can be adapted into working with control room operators to really understand their experience and thus make their experience better, thus making the overall efficiency of the assets better. So if you think about it, end user experience, let's think about how we use an app, right? Like your bank app can be really annoying, and that's a bad user experience and you don't like it. So if your control room operators are going through that all day, every day, of course it's frustrating. Of course they're not being as efficient as they should be. Same thing with a car, right? If your experience in your car is not fun, you're probably gonna wanna go buy a new car. So let's think about it from that perspective. So as an executive or an engineer in the industry, what are some things that you can do to really be fostering that end user empathy? So be curious and ask questions. Ask these folks questions, ask them how their day is going. You can learn these fantastic little nuggets. Listen attentively. So practice active listening, just because you're the engineer and you know all the hydraulics, mathematics behind it or whatever, listen to what they have to say. Like they're the ones with their fingers on the keyboard actually executing this stuff, and you've got a lot to learn from them. Understand the user's feelings. So how do they feel about their day-to-day job? What's the most frustrating part for them? How does shift change feel? How does a pipeline startup feel, right? Like, I've done that and it gets sweaty, right? Those are important feelings, and would you enjoy feeling that way in your job day to day? Probably not. So then there's things that can be addressed, right? And then tying that back to if somebody's stressed out or having a tough time, how does that actually impact the overall effectiveness of the organization to achieve moving oil safely and efficiently? So making sure that all of that is being tied together in systems thinking. We talked about that, understanding the end user's feelings. On to the next one. This one I love. So do not show superiority to the user. This is something that I see, people graduate from engineering, bit of a chip on their shoulder. They know all the math behind this. They know how this thing works. It's like, well, maybe you don't, right? These folks have been sitting in this control room operating this thing day in, day out, and you don't know as much as them. So do not show superiority. Or if you're an exec, just because you've been promoted a few times or whatever, you maybe have spent, 1 hour a week in the control room. You're not superior to them. So making sure that people really remember that, because that humility helps them to feel comfortable so that you can ask questions and listen attentively and actually get responses from them. And train yourself in observation. So reading between the lines, right? So maybe you've got a control room operator who has had poor experiences working with engineers or poor experiences with executives, and they don't want to open up and tell you things. So reading between the lines, understanding what they're actually trying to say, because again, their success is your success as an engineer or as an executive in the industry. So this is stuff that I just wanted to talk about. Again, these are terms that people hear more and more in the tech world, and how those terms apply into oil pipelines. So I hope that was helpful. Thanks.